Welcome to Echoes of My Imagination. My name is Tracy Lee. Sit back, relax, let me tell you a story. Today's story is called The Adventures of KhAnubis with a K, Book 1, Egypt, written by Tracy Lee Thompson. KhAnubis, fourth cousin to Anubis, they think, is not your typical god in training. His magic is unpredictable. His ears are too big, and his robes are usually on fire. But when he's unexpectedly chosen by Ra, Bastet, and Thoth to carry the next spark into the modern world, everything changes. Assigned to 21st century Earth under deep and slightly glitchy disguise as a museum janitor named Alexander, KhAnubis quickly discovers that the magic humanity once knew isn't gone. It's just hiding in the corners, waiting to be noticed. With a mop that doubles as a divine antenna, a cosmic navigation pyramid named Wedge, and a sentient plush camel named Thoth, KhAnubis stumbles into a forgotten hallway beneath the Cairo Museum. There he meets Ameen, a sideways-seeing Earth kid with a granola bar, excellent instincts, and a destiny no one saw coming. Together, they uncover lost stories, unlock ancient glyphs, and accidentally trigger a hidden archive that's been waiting centuries for someone just weird enough to wake it up. But something else has noticed too. Chaos is stirring beneath the city. The museum remembers, and a new myth is beginning to write itself, one mop tile at a time. Let's get into it. Prelude. The sun over ancient Egypt didn't rise. It announced itself. Golden light poured across temple rooftops, bounced off sandstone columns, and swept over the desert like a ceremonial trumpet blast. Everything shimmered. The Nile's surface like molten glass, the pyramids casting impossibly long shadows, and the very air tingling with ancient static. The heat came next, not oppressive, commanding, like a hot towel over the shoulders from someone who very much expected results. Somewhere in the outer rim of Luxor, beneath a cracked sandstone structure marked Employment Intake, Lesser Divinities Division, KhAnubis paced. Not strutted, not slouched, paced, like a being who'd read the assignment, underlined the key words, and still wasn't sure if the teacher liked his handwriting. "Deep breaths," he muttered. "You've got this. You haven't set anything on fire in what, 4 days? That's growth." KhAnubis wasn't like the others, not yet. His jackal ears were a little too big, his cloak too rumpled. His magical signatures tended to come out upside down. He always seemed to trail a bit of cosmic lint behind him, no matter how many times he brushed his robes. But his heart, his weird, fiercely loyal, sun-baked heart, was tuned like a bell to one clear note. He wanted to help, and that made him dangerous. Inside the intake hall, Ra himself sat behind the approval bench, sunglasses over one eye, sipping some sort of nectar espresso hybrid from a golden chalice shaped like a goose. He didn't need to be here. It was the kind of task usually passed down to departmental interns or sentient scrolls, but he liked to watch the weird ones. KhAnubis approached the dais with the enthusiasm of someone trying to make eye contact and avoid it at the same time. "Name," barked the clerk god beside Ra, scribbling on a papyrus scroll with a pen that blinked like a firefly. "KhAnubis, with the K." The pen froze mid-scribble. Ra looked over his sunglasses. "With a K?" "Yes, sir. Fourth cousin to Anubis, we think. The lineage map is kind of smudged." Ra squinted, then grinned. "Oh, you're the one who turned the Eye of Horus into a cookie cutter." "That was one time, and I did bring cookies." They were burnt. They were symbolic. Ra chuckled. You're on the short list. Final interview is at sunset behind the Sphinx's left ear. Don't be late. The Sphinx hates late. KhAnubis blinked. Wait, really? Ra raised a single eyebrow. Too many apps, he muttered, standing up with a stretch that cracked the sky open with a tiny bolt of lightning. Not enough naps. He vanished in a flare of sunbeam and glitter. KhAnubis stood frozen, scroll clutched in both hands, tail twitching. Then he grinned. He was finally going to have a say. Sunset in Egypt didn't just cast shadows, it summoned them. The horizon bled gold and violet while the dunes turned to slow-moving waves, whispering secrets between grains. The great Sphinx, stoic and massive, loomed like it always had, except tonight its left ear was twitching. KhAnubis stood at the base of its enormous paw, trying not to sweat through his ceremonial linen. Okay, he whispered to himself. Breathe. Stand tall. Do not step in anything mythical. The Sphinx groaned as it shifted. A single glowing eye flicked open and looked down at him. The voice that came next sounded like sandpaper dragged across a vinyl record. You're early. Better than late, KhAnubis offered. Barely, the Sphinx muttered. Climb up the back leg. You'll find the door. Don't knock. It's rude. Climbing an ancient celestial guardian's haunch was harder than it looked. The sandstone felt oddly warm, like sun-baked fur, and occasionally made a sound as he stepped on a sensitive spot. The door, an actual circular stone with a knob shaped like a crocodile playing a lyre, opened as soon as he reached it. Inside was less majestic than he'd expected. It smelled faintly of incense and something suspiciously like beet chips. Gold-lined benches circled a glowing table made of moonstone, covered in hieroglyphs that rearranged themselves when stared at too long. It was the kind of room designed by someone who had just learned what humans found mysterious and ran with it. Ra lounged on one of the benches, sandals off, humming to himself while sketching hieroglyphs of sandwiches on the table. Across from him sat Bastet, brushing her whiskers with a comb made of pearl and sass. Thoth was there too, trying to fold a piece of papyrus into a crane with 16 wings. KhAnubis froze in the doorway. Ra looked up. Hey, look who didn't explode anything on the way in. I wasn't planning to. Progress, Bastet purred. Thoth didn't look up. Did anyone tell him yet? Tell me what? KhAnubis asked carefully. Ra stood, walked around the table, and placed both hands on KhAnubis's shoulders. You've been chosen, he said, voice surprisingly soft. To carry the next spark, you're getting your own assignment. KhAnubis blinked. A temple? Ra shook his head. A team? Nope. A camel? Definitely not. Then what? Bastet grinned. You're going to Earth. KhAnubis blinked again. I am on Earth. Thoth chuckled darkly. Not this Earth. The current one. 21st century Earth. The messy one with apps and oat milk. Where everyone forgot what magic feels like, Ra added. Bastet leaned in. You'll blend in, sort of. Technically. You want me, KhAnubis said slowly, to help a planet that forgot the gods by reminding them? Ra handed him a scroll. You'll remind them how to laugh, he said, and why weird matters. And just like that, the table lit up, the Sphinx snorted a small sandstorm through her nose, and KhAnubis was marked. Not with a crown or sword, with a tiny glowing beetle that zipped up his sleeve and parked itself on his collarbone like a glittering name tag. "Good luck, kid," Ross said, turning toward the side door that led to nowhere. "You leave in the morning. Don't oversleep. The Nile gets cranky when we run late." Chapter 1. KhAnubis woke up with sand in his ears and his mouth, and somehow in his elbow. The room around him pulsed gently with warm amber light. A series of sandstone archways carved with soft, shifting glyphs lined the far wall. Thin gauze curtains fluttered in the breeze that slipped through a half-open sky vent in the ceiling. It smelled faintly of papyrus, toasted dates, and whatever Ra's midnight snack had been. He coughed and rolled over. Sand slid out of his blanket in a gritty avalanche and pulled against the floor tiles like it had followed him home from the dunes and made itself comfortable. "Unbelievable," he muttered, sitting up. "How does the desert get into my bed when I haven't even left yet?" The room, his assigned quarters in the Celestial Relay Annex beneath Luxor, was technically private. Small, tucked into the lower level, and charmed against time leaks. But privacy was relative when the walls occasionally hummed to themselves or let in gossiping wind spirits by mistake. KhAnubis stretched. His joints popped in 3 languages. The low morning light made his fur shimmer, black with undertones of violet and indigo, shifting slightly under different angles like dusk trapped under velvet. His ceremonial linen robe hung from a hook beside the doorway, still slightly singed from yesterday's accident involving the incense burner and Thoth's experimental scroll. Across the room, a stone pedestal doubled as a nightstand/altar. On it sat a few essentials: a cracked mirror rimmed with a meteorite dust, a scroll tied with an obsidian beetle clasp, a half-empty mug shaped like a goose, Ra's espresso cup left behind during an unscheduled check-in, and a fig. The fig was still warm, probably divine interference, or Bastet being extra. The room was dry, warm, and full of quiet potential, the kind of space that didn't mind being small because it hummed with purpose. Today's wasn't just another test. Today he was leaving. A flicker of nervous energy tickled the tips of his ears. "I'm actually doing this," he whispered. "I'm going. They picked me." He stood and took a deep breath, letting the air settle in his lungs. No pressure. Just the fate of a sleeping myth network, a half-lost planet, and one glitchy jackal in rumpled linen. A soft beep chimed near the ceiling, then again, sharper. KhAnubis turned just as a floating pyramid-shaped device unhooked itself from the wall niche and hovered towards him. Its surface was black glass etched with gold runes that blinked like thoughtful fireflies. Small stabilizer wings rotated gently at its corners, giving it the attitude of a librarian with a secret. Wedge. Assigned to him 2 weeks ago, Wedge was technically a trans-dimensional navigation assistant, but in practice, he was a hovering cosmic backseat driver with a dry sense of humor and exactly 0 patience for mystical tardiness. Wedge pulsed red. "I'm up," KhAnubis groaned. "I'm up." Wedge projected a glyph in midair. Departure in 14 minutes. Error margin unacceptable. KhAnubis grabbed his robe, wrestled it over his head, and immediately got tangled in the shoulder loop. Wedge spun slowly, unhelpfully. "Don't judge me," KhAnubis muttered. "This robe has corners." He finally got it on, reached for the scroll, and tucked the fig into his belt pouch for later. The mirror flashed once, reflecting not his face, but a strange, faraway version of it, the kind of reflection you only saw when a story had already begun without you. He paused. Outside the sky vent, the sun was rising. No birds, just heat and the echo of Ra's soft laugh somewhere high above the annex. "Okay," KhAnubis whispered to himself, squaring his shoulders. "Let's go meet Earth." He stepped into the corridor, sand still in his fur, heart pounding like a drum built for better gods, and followed Wedge towards the launch chamber. Chapter 2. The departure chamber smelled like sun-warmed copper and unfinished decisions. KhAnubis stood in the center of the celestial relay annex, ceremonial robe flapping gently in the static charged breeze, staring into the swirling sand-streaked portal shaped like a sideways hourglass. The entire space shimmered, part temple, part launchpad, part bureaucratic fever dream. One of the pillars was humming the wrong frequency, but no one seemed to care. Wedge hovered nearby, projecting countdown glyphs and subtle disapproval. "Departure in 6 minutes," KhAnubis muttered to himself. Plenty of time to completely unravel. He took a deep breath. The air was dry and thick with ozone. Overhead, the sky vent was fully open now, revealing a sliver of early light and one very smug-looking ibis gliding past like it knew something he didn't. KhAnubis adjusted his collar. His heart was doing a weird mix of excited drumbeat and interpretive jazz. This was really happening. He was going to Earth, not just visiting, not running an errand or fetching another cursed scroll from the Duat archive. This was an assignment. His assignment. Ra had said so. Bastet had winked. Thoth had sort of nodded. Probably. "All right," he said, rolling his shoulders. "Let's go be weird." The portal gave a polite chime. Ding! Like a toaster that knew too much. KhAnubis stepped in. Falling was not part of the official transition sequence, but he did anyway. The sand stream caught him like a cosmic riptide, whipping him forward, down, and vaguely sideways through folds of compressed story fields. Light bent, sound ducked. At one point, he passed a flying camel that saluted him with a banana peel. "What?" he tried to shout, but the wind stole his words and handed him a fig. Time hiccuped. He blinked and slammed straight into Earth. He landed face first in a mop bucket. It was blue, it was full, and it did not care about his dignity. Cold water soaked through his robe. His knees hit tile. A roll of paper towels bounced off his head and thumped to the floor with a kind of ceremonial finality. "Arrived," muttered the mop bucket. KhAnubis groaned. The small storage room around him was dim and oddly chilly. Shelves lined the walls, packed with cleaning supplies, unopened air fresheners, and a pyramid-shaped wet floor sign with googly eyes someone had definitely added without divine approval. He sat up, dripping. The door bore a sticker. "Maintenance, staff only. Do not question the janitor." Wedge floated in behind him, miraculously dry and smug as ever. "Could have warned me," KhAnubis muttered. Wedge spun once and projected a cheery glyph. "Disguise mode ready. Please assume form. Alexander." With a wheep of energy, his morph field activated. His long snout faded. His ears reshaped. His ceremonial robe dissolved into well-worn khakis, a utility belt with zip ties, and a hoodie embroidered with Cairo Museum temp crew. His badge blinked to life. Alexander. His mop, now a long-handled tool with glowing accents no one else would see, hovered politely at his side. He squinted at the mirror, bolted to the inside of the maintenance closet door. Gone was the jackal-eared celestial with cosmic lint on his sleeves. In his place stood a human man, maybe mid-20s, with warm bronze skin, soft features, and a mop of loose curls barely contained beneath a museum-issued ball cap. His eyes were dark, curious, and slightly too reflective, like they'd been coated from starlight and were still getting used to having irises. He looked tired, but not unkind, like someone who offered directions even when he didn't work there. His oversized hoodie hung awkwardly on his narrow shoulders. The name stitched into the badge at his chest read Alexander. The embroidery was fading. The X looked like it had been re-stitched by someone who didn't believe in straight lines. He tilted his head. "Okay, Alexander," he whispered. "Be casual. Be normal. Don't accidentally glow." He opened the door and stepped out. The hallway beyond was cooler than he expected. A subtle rush of air flowed from unseen vents, carrying with it a blend of lemon polish, marble dust, and something ancient, not decayed, just waiting. The Cairo Museum of Antiquities stretched out around him like a half-awake animal, drowsy but coiled, holding centuries of breath between its teeth. He moved slowly, mop in hand. Vaulted ceilings arched overhead in smooth sandstone curves. Spotlights flickered across high cornices, illuminating carved lions, falcons, and gods who had once governed entire empires, and now guarded security cameras and motion sensors instead. KhAnubis, Alexander, walked with quiet reverence. He passed towering statues, cracked along fault lines older than some planets. He passed tall, flat stone slabs, hand-carved with deeply etched hieroglyphs and prayers, known as stelae. An ancient public notice board or spiritual plaque, except sacred, artistic, and built to last for millennia. There was a rhythm in the way everything was placed. Relics encased in glass, fragments catalogued and labeled, rooms arranged like altars rebranded as education. To his left, a seal stone doorway embedded in the floor read, "Not yet open to the public." To his right, a vending machine labeled refreshments spat out a bag of wasabi peas for no one. He smiled. "They still hum," he whispered, running his fingers across the glass case of a 3,000-year-old mirror. "They're still alive in here. You just don't hear it anymore." Wedge beeped once in agreement from inside the pocket of his hoodie. He kept walking. The museum wasn't quiet. Not really. It was listening. The museum hall opened before him like a puzzle that had just exhaled. Cool air met his face, marble tiles stretched beneath his boots. Above him, the high arches of the Egyptian wing curved like ribs, ancient, shadowed, echoing with footsteps that didn't belong to anyone anymore. He moved slowly. The mop beeped once, then again. To his left, a towering statue of Anubis in jackal form, standing silent and severe. KhAnubis gave it a respectful nod. "Hi, probably cousin. Don't judge the outfit." To his right, an exhibit titled Tools of the Afterlife. It was creative. The display included a plastic lunchbox with a falcon sticker, a cheaply printed scroll that curled from humidity, and an ankh made of clear acrylic that lit up blue whenever someone walked by, blinking like it needed a nap. A sign beside it read, "Authentic replicas," based on probable spiritual assumptions. KhAnubis tilted his head. That's not how assumptions work. He turned in a slow circle, taking in the hall again. It was enormous. Vaulted stone ribs arched above like the belly of some ancient mythical beast. The displays stretched in both directions, solemn statues shadowed alcoves, reverent silence punctuated by the occasional beep from a tour group wristband. The air buzzed faintly with air conditioning and suppressed magic. He looked down at the mop in his hand. It hadn't been part of the original plan, not technically, but no one had stopped him when he took it from the closet, and the more he held it, the more it felt right. Low profile, wand-shaped, slightly ridiculous. He could scan quietly while pretending to clean, blend in, observe, help without disrupting the local timeline. He gave the mop a cautious swish. It beeped approvingly. A swirl of dust caught the light behind him like a miniature sandstorm doing interpretive dance. KhAnubis nodded. "This is it," he whispered. "This is how I save Earth." Wedge, still tucked invisibly inside his hoodie pocket, emitted a slow blink that may have meant, "Please don't." Too late. KhAnubis squared his shoulders, adjusted his badge, and rolled into motion. He was now officially mopping between timelines. The gods might have chosen warriors, kings, or prophets in ages past. This time, they were sending in the janitor. By late morning, the crowds had begun to trickle in. KhAnubis watched as school children spilled across the floor like slightly loud blessings. Their chatter echoed through the exhibit halls, curious, unfiltered, beautifully chaotic. He sidestepped a rogue juice box, scanned an enchanted coin pedestal, and tried very hard not to sparkle under pressure. Then the mop beeped again. Not a regular boop. This one came with a glyph warning. He turned. In the far corner of the Egyptian wing, past a half-lit sarcophagus in an ancient stone basin that had never stopped leaking hope, stood a modest exhibit. The Eye of Ra collection. It was small, tucked away, easy to miss. A single artifact sat behind the velvet rope, an unmarked sarcophagus, undated, unattributed, and very much humming. The plaque read, "Donation. No known origin. Do not open." KhAnubis stepped closer. The air here felt interested, like the room was leaning in. He knelt beside the rope and placed a hand on the floor. The tile beneath his palm vibrated with a quiet purpose, a beacon. One of the old ones, still alive, still listening. A voice echoed behind him. "Hey, mister!" KhAnubis turned. A group of kids stared up at him, eyes wide. One held out a slightly squished granola bar. "This is for you. My grandpa says weirdos need snacks more than regular people." KhAnubis accepted it with reverence. "Thank you," he said. The boy grinned. "I like your mop. It sparkles funny." Behind KhAnubis, the sarcophagus pulsed once, barely visible, but enough. Enough for the story to begin folding open. Chapter 3. By late morning, the museum began to fill, and the magic noticed. KhAnubis stood at the edge of the Egyptian wing, mop in hand, hoodie loose, eyes bright. He'd been mopping for exactly 40 minutes, scanned 4 display pedestals, realigned 1 mislabeled godstone, and quietly reversed the polarity of an anti-wonder charm someone had accidentally placed near the bathrooms in 1987. The floor was technically cleaner, but more importantly, the pulse under the marble was louder. The people were waking it up. A tour group rounded the corner, maybe 24 visitors, half of them buzzing children in bright school shirts. KhAnubis watched as the first kid crossed the sandstone threshold, and the nearest statue flinched. Not visibly, not to anyone else, but the air around it crackled just faintly, like static deciding whether or not to become lightning. He grinned. The adults moved through the room like they were inside a library made of eggshells, shoulders hunched, eyes on plaques, walking as if reverence meant silence. But the kids ran. They pointed, they whispered, they got close to the glass and licked things. They trailed curiosity behind them like glowing ribbons, and the museum responded. The glyphs beneath one display shimmered when a girl laughed. The eye of Horus statue blinked faintly when a boy sneezed on it. One ancient measuring tool moved a fraction of an inch when someone sang into their juice box. KhAnubis wasn't surprised. He'd studied these phenomena for millennia, but watching it live, watching Earth's magic stretch and stir like a cat who just remembered it had claws, that was something else. He stepped back and leaned against the wall beside a massive obsidian jackal. Wedge buzzed quietly in his hoodie pocket, projecting faint diagnostic glyphs he wasn't even pretending to look at. His gaze stayed locked on the humans, their awkward joy, their elbowing and giggles, and questions that made the exhibits twitch. A woman with braids and a lion tattoo brushed past the Sekhmet statue, and the torch glyph on its chest flickered. A young man in a faded hoodie stopped to sketch a scarab. His pencil moved too fast to be copying. The museum's energy rose with them, reacting, testing, choosing. Not everyone made it hum, but some left trails. KhAnubis tracked them with a half smile, mop resting over his shoulder like a divine antenna. "All right," he murmured. "Now we're talking." The Eye of Ra alcove was quieter. Tucked back beyond the major displays, it held only one artifact, a modest sarcophagus with no official date, no origin story, and a plaque that read, "Donation, unverified, do not open." Underneath in pen, "Seriously, Daryl." KhAnubis stepped closer. He'd passed this thing twice already, but now the energy had loosened. A heartbeat under the stone, faint but hungry. He pressed one palm to the tile and felt it, pulsing like a story waiting for a brave sentence. Wedge pinged. The glyph flashed. Beacon initiating. KhAnubis grinned wide. About time. Then, "Hey, mister!" He turned around. A kid, maybe 9, stood just behind the velvet rope, holding a slightly smushed granola bar in one hand and a fig in the other. His curls were wild. His shirt was half tucked. His eyes were the kind that didn't just see, they read. "You look like you're not, really a janitor," the boy said. KhAnubis straightened. "I look like a janitor with purpose." The boy extended the fig. "In stories, the weird ones were always like these." KhAnubis took it. It was warm. "Thanks," he said, suddenly aware that the sarcophagus behind him had just shivered. "I'm Ameen," said the boy. "My grandpa says I see sideways." KhAnubis smiled, heart rising. "Well then, Ameen," he said, "want to help me do something really wildly irresponsible?" The fig pulsed once, and the wall beside the exhibit blinked, just slightly, like a door remembering how to open. Chapter 4. The moment the fig changed temperature in his hand, KhAnubis knew the doorway was real. Not metaphor real, real, the kind that required caution, bravery, and possibly snacks. A faint click echoed through the alcove as the sandstone wall beside the Eye of Ra exhibit wavered, like light shining through water. Glyphs shimmered across the surface, then the wall folded inward, revealing a narrow archway where none had been seconds ago. It smelled like old spice racks, thunderclouds, and forgotten music. KhAnubis turned to Ameen, who was already halfway through the opening. He pushed the curtain of light aside like it was a doorway into his own imagination. "This place smells like thunderstorms and old books," he said, grinning. "I love it already." He turned to look back at KhAnubis, eyes wide. "Do real gods always have secret passages?" KhAnubis smirked. "Only the stylish ones. Hey, wait, you're not even slightly hesitant?" Ameen looked back, deadpan. "You said wildly irresponsible. I assumed we were doing it." KhAnubis snorted and followed. Inside, the air changed. It was warmer here, still, but charged like static lived in the walls. The corridor was long and oddly curved, like it had grown by accident or whim. KhAnubis ran his hand along the shifting wall. It tingled beneath his fingers, not hostile, just shy. "These glyphs aren't static. This place is reacting to us," he murmured, half to Wedge, half to the wall. He wasn't surprised. He was trained for this, but still. Earth had its own flavor of enchantment. Weird, sticky, personal. He liked it. The floor beneath them was smooth but not modern. Soft golden stone that gave just slightly with each step. The walls, alive. Not pulsing or glowing, fluctuating. Glyphs moved gently across the surface like silt in a river current. Hieroglyphs one moment, circuit diagrams the next, then spirals made of dancing beetles. The symbols didn't scroll, they breathed. "This is wild," Ameen whispered, eyes wide. "Like the museum dreamed a hallway and forgot to delete it." KhAnubis nodded. "Or maybe the museum remembered." Wedge flickered out of his hoodie pocket and hovered just over his shoulder. The little pyramid emitted a soft, diagnostic whine. KhAnubis glanced at it. "What's the verdict?" Wedge projected. "Temporal layering detected. Dimensional drift 7%. Object anomaly count 1." Before KhAnubis could respond, a small door blinked open in the floor, not dramatically, just a subtle k-tch, followed by a polite puff of glitter. And then a plush camel slowly rose from the opening. Its button eyes blinked independently. Its fur looked slightly scorched on one side. A tag on its rear end read, "Warm Spiral Archive. Object 0007. Name, Toast." It stared at them, then sneezed. Ameen gasped. "I love him!" KhAnubis crouched. "Do you come with instructions?" Toast blinked, then flopped dramatically onto his side and refused to move. "I think that's a yes," Ameen said. KhAnubis gently picked up the plush camel and tucked him under one arm. "All right, Toast, welcome to the mission." At the end of the corridor, the path split. To the left, a staircase spiraling downward into a glow that buzzed like bottled laughter. To the right, a curved ramp lined with floating panels displaying memories, not photographs or artifacts, moments. A girl braiding her grandmother's hair, a boy writing in chalk on the sidewalk that hadn't existed in 4,000 years, someone planting a garden where war used to be. KhAnubis paused. "These aren't from here." "They're from Earth," Ameen said quietly. "But not the part the museum shows." Wedge beeped. A new glyph appeared overhead. "Curiosity is the key. Truth opens when touched. Touch carefully." KhAnubis looked down at Toast. Toast wiggled once. Ameen knelt down beside the plush camel and offered a solemn nod. "He's not just a toy." KhAnubis raised a brow. "He's a sidekick," Ameen added. "All the best stories have one." Toast licked the side of Ameen's hoodie and settled in like he'd just been promoted. "I vote we touch everything," Ameen said. KhAnubis grinned. Stars help us. I agree. And together they walked deeper into the hall of nearly forgotten things, where Earth's real stories had been hiding just beneath the surface, all along. Chapter 5. The ramp ended in a round chamber that looked like it had been carved from golden fog. Soft amber light spilled from grooves in the walls, too symmetrical to be natural, too gentle to be artificial. The floor underfoot felt warm, like sandstone after a long day in the sun. But when KhAnubis tapped it with his boot, it sang softly, like distant wind chimes buried under memory. The walls were curved and seamless, lined with glowing panels that pulsed just faintly. They didn't hum or blink. They waited. Each panel held flickering scenes barely formed, like dreams that hadn't finished being remembered. Ameen reached out and touched one with a flat palm. The surface rippled. Ameen's breath caught. He stared like he'd just bumped into an old friend he didn't know he'd missed. "It's so normal," he whispered, "but it feels like it matters." His fingers hovered just above the surface, reluctant to touch again. Is that what magic feels like to you all the time?" KhAnubis glanced sideways. "Not like this," he said softly. "This place is trying to remember us back." A moment unfurled. A narrow clay street at sunset, an old woman weaving cloth on her knees, a child giggling beside her as pigeons fluttered past. Then pop! It was gone, replaced by soft light again. "No label," Ameen whispered, "but it feels real, like I was there." KhAnubis nodded, eyes scanning the walls. "These aren't official museum pieces." "Nope," Ameen said. "These are the stories nobody saved." KhAnubis moved slowly now, reverent. The chamber had weight, not just physically, but emotionally. The air wasn't dusty, but it tasted like pages and old songs, like something sacred had been left there on purpose. Then, beneath his boots, a pulse. Deep, resonant, like the heartbeat of a sleeping mountain. The center panel pulsed once, then again. Then with a sharp, apologetic twang, it cracked open. A circular platform rose up from the floor, smooth and seamless, like it had always been there and simply forgot how to rise until now. Dustless, ancient, kind. KhAnubis and Ameen stepped back in unison. Wedge blinked to full alert in his hoodie pocket. Toast made a tiny plush and refused to be impressed. From the center of the platform, a column of blue light flickered into existence, thin at first, then blooming outward like petals forming a silhouette. Lines of energy looped and swirled, arranging themselves into the projection of a tall, robed figure, translucent, slightly glitchy, and blinking as though someone had just opened a very bright curtain after a 1,000-year nap. The figure spoke. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, low, calm, but edged with ancient bureaucracy. "Archival Guardian Online. Initiation Recognition Protocol." KhAnubis gave a short bow. "Hi. Don't panic." The Guardian tilted his head and blinked at Toast. "Primary interface detected. Object 0007. Designation Toast. Status fluffed." Toast wiggled proudly and made a sound like a deflating bagpipe. The Guardian continued. "Secondary interface. Unregistered celestial entity. Role field maintenance. Status delayed. Uniform non-standard." Ameen snorted. "You're getting roasted by the ghost." "Tertiary interface. Earthchild. Status active story node." Ameen beamed like someone had just knighted him. The projection paused, then changed. The stiffness melted a little. The light softened. KhAnubis stepped closer to the projection, his posture instinctively respectful. He wasn't intimidated. He was trained for this. Magic was his language, and this was an ancient dialect that still made his spine hum. "We've come to help," he said clearly. "If the stories want to wake up, we'll hold the light steady." "You made it." KhAnubis lowered his hand. "I did." "You're early and late and strange." He grinned. "You'll get used to me." Without warning, a wall panel shot open and launched a platter of objects at them. 2 fabric ID badges, a stick of chalk, 3 data keys shaped like scarabs, a lint roller, and a very overripe banana. The badges hovered in midair, waiting. One stuck to KhAnubis's hoodie. "Hello, I am here to help, probably." Ameen zipped towards him and velcroed to his chest. "Junior curator of forbidden stuff." Toast's pin levitated, wobbled, then attached itself sideways between his ears. Legend. He accepted this with quiet dignity. The light around the guardian flickered again. "Systems are unstable. Memory threads loose. Foundations shifting. Something is returning beneath us. Something old." KhAnubis grew still. "Like what?" The projection hesitated, then almost tenderly. "The story itself. The one you came to find." Ameen stepped forward. "Can we help?" "Yes, but be careful. This place remembers too much, and not all of it likes being remembered." Another glyph flared overhead. Phase 2 unlocked. Core storylines reactivated. Caution, plush ones are sentient and may unionize. Toast did a somersault. KhAnubis raised a brow. "We'll risk it." A passage opened to their left, revealing a spiral staircase descending into soft green light. He turned to Ameen. "You ready?" The boy already had the chalk in one hand and was writing a spiral in his shoe. "Born ready." Together they descended. Toward the library that didn't know it was a library, the locks that had started unlocking themselves, and the strange, buried heartbeat of something magical finally waking up. Chapter 6. The staircase wound down like a secret that didn't trust straight lines. The further they went, the quieter it got. Not silent, but a listening kind of quiet. Like the walls had ears and they were holding their breath. The air was cooler now, but dry, like it had been waiting for centuries without anyone breathing in it. The walls weren't rough stone anymore. They shimmered, soft and polished, the color of sand just before dusk. If you stared too long, you'd catch the shapes beneath. Swirling spirals, painted constellations, fingerprints of stories no one had told yet. At the bottom, the passage opened into a wide, circular chamber. The floor stopped KhAnubis in his tracks. It was made of mirrored tiles, but not clean ones. Each one was cracked slightly, like it had seen too much. Reflections blinked back at them, but not theirs. KhAnubis looked down and saw a field of stars where his feet should have been. Ameen stepped on a tile that showed a busy city street, with no sound, like a memory on mute. At the center of the room hovered a single, round console, ancient and strange. Stone base, metallic rim, and a collection of curved buttons and softly glowing indentations that looked like they belonged to some kind of ancient control system. Right in the middle, a large red switch. It was labeled in clean, curved script. "Absolutely do not touch." Ameen grinned. "So, we're touching it, right?" KhAnubis raised one brow. "That depends. Do you feel like being catapulted into a different time zone? or just briefly erased. Before Ameen could vote, Toast waddled forward, launched himself at the console like a soft, fearless missile, and slammed the red switch with his entire plush body. "Toast, no!" Ameen yelled too late. Then he froze, mouth open as the room began to change. The shimmer, the mirrors, the sudden shift in gravity. He wasn't scared. He was thrilled. "Okay, that was the coolest mistake I have ever seen," he whispered. There was a pause. The room did not explode, but it did shiver. A wave of warmth rolled under their feet, slow and steady, like someone waking up from a nap they didn't agree to. The mirrored floor blurred for a moment, then sharpened. KhAnubis looked down and saw a desert with 3 suns. Ameen's tile showed a floating library made of glass and wind. Ameen stared down, blinking fast. That's from my dream last year," he said. He knelt, pressing both hands to the tile like it might drift away. "I drew this." "I forgot I did, but it's real." Ameen stepped back, staring at the walls. "I don't know if I'm dreaming or finally seeing things right." He pressed his hand to his chest, then to the stone. "This place feels alive, like it's glad we're here." "That's because it is," KhAnubis said, eyes scanning the patterns with something like reverence. "Some stories just need company to breathe again." KhAnubis crouched beside him, quiet for once. "Maybe magic doesn't forget. It doesn't forget what we're meant to find." KhAnubis turned slowly in a circle. "This place isn't a room," he whispered. "It's a memory vault." A low sound rumbled up from beneath the floor, not mechanical, alive, like a deep breath from a very old creature who had been asleep under the museum for a very long time. Suddenly, lines of light burst from the console, racing along the floor in all directions, forming a circular ring around the chamber. Symbols rose from the stone, flickering in and out like fireflies. Not the symbols KhAnubis knew. He didn't recognize any official divine script. These were scraps, the edges of forgotten alphabets, lullabies sung before anyone bothered writing things down. One of the glowing patterns floated in front of them, hovering in the air. It read, "You've been seen." KhAnubis' smile dropped slightly. "Oh." Ameen looked around. "By what?" He didn't have to wait too long. From high above them, the ceiling blinked. For the briefest moment, KhAnubis felt a presence pressing in, not hostile, not friendly, just there, from outside the museum, from somewhere else entirely. The chamber dimmed. The light from the console shifted color, turning green, then violet, then deep gold, like the color of temple walls just before a thunderstorm. The mirrors under their feet brightened again. Ameen shuffled closer without saying anything, his hand clutching the chalk now like it was a wand. "That felt big," he whispered. KhAnubis didn't argue. It was. He reached out, steadying Ameen with a hand on the shoulder. "But so are we." Now the tiles were showing the same image in every direction, a figure standing in shadow, just a silhouette, but turning toward them slowly. Toast let out a squeaky gasp and fell flat, pretending to be a totally normal, unconscious plush camel. KhAnubis narrowed his eyes. "Someone noticed," he said, "and they're interested." The air buzzed again. This time the whole floor responded, tilting itself outward like it was rearranging the room's memories around them. The console flared one final time, and then, like nothing happened, the chamber stilled. The tiles returned to soft reflection, the light softened, and the silhouette vanished. But KhAnubis knew the feeling. The story wasn't just unfolding now. It had picked up speed. Chapter 7. The staircase narrowed. not just in shape but in mood. It felt less like walking downstairs and more like stepping between thoughts that hadn't decided what kind of story they belonged to yet. KhAnubis led the way, its boots tapping lightly on the sandstone worn soft by centuries of indecision. His mop was slung over one shoulder, like a holy relic masquerading as janitorial equipment. His hoodie caught flickers of glyph light as they passed, whispers of half-formed myths curling across the walls before vanishing like breath on glass. Ameen followed, his fingers trailing along the rail. He didn't speak. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with the kind of wonder that made the air feel thick and sacred. In his left hand, he was still gripping the chalk. It glowed faintly now, or maybe it always had. Toast balanced on Ameen's shoulders, lopsided and proud, like a heroic sidekick who had pointed himself first plush into battle. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. It smelled like lightning and fig trees, like the exact second before someone tells you a secret. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. "Feel that?" KhAnubis murmured. Ameen nodded. "Like something's holding its breath." "Probably the floor." "The floor?" "Yeah," said KhAnubis. "It has opinions." The stairwell opened into a long hallway, but not the museum kind. This was no exhibit. The stone here pulsed in soft gold and shadow, like moonlight filtering through honey. The floor tiles shimmered beneath their feet, not from polish, but from memory. Every step released a faint hum, as though the room was quietly checking for their credentials. The walls were alive with movement, not pictures, but patterns. Glyphs and spirals shifted in the stone like dreams trying to pick a form. Some dissolved before you could name them. Others lingered long enough to leave an impression in your chest. To the left, a curve in the wall rippled, then blinked open. A new doorway. No sign, no knob, just a smooth, breath-warmed arch outlined in light. Ameen stepped forward instinctively, but paused. "Was that always there?" "Sort of," said KhAnubis. "It just didn't feel like being noticed until now." The light at the threshold felt like velvet, soft, slow, thick with yes. KhAnubis nudged his head towards it. "Give it a try?" Ameen stared for a moment, then raised the chalk. He drew a circle across the stone. As soon as the line closed, the wall sighed. A real, ancient, contented sigh. Then it opened, neatly, politely, like a curtain at a show that had been cancelled for centuries and just got restaged. Inside was a room shaped like memory. It was round, sun-warmed, and lit from within, not by torches or tech, but by soft pulses of truth. Shelves curved along the walls in half-forgotten spirals. Each niche held something different. A folded child's drawing of a bird with two heads, a cracked compass filled with sand, a tiny clay boat with stars painted inside of it, a coin with no nation, and a hole worn straight through the middle. Ameen walked slowly, awestruck. "These are just normal things." KhAnubis smiled. "Magic doesn't care if you're impressed. It cares if you meant it." At the center of the room sat a stone pedestal shaped like a shallow bowl. Inside, a handful of dust, a single coin, and a feather that moved slightly, even though there was no breeze. Beside it, a door. Not an illusion. A real, upright wooden door standing unsupported on the stone. Its surface shimmered like it had been carved from the core of a tree that grew only in forgotten stories. There was no handle, just a word scratched into the grain with quiet certainty. Right. Ameen's breath caught. With what? The chalk in his hand pulsed like a heartbeat. KhAnubis stepped back, giving him the space. "This one's yours." Ameen stepped forward and, without thinking, knelt. He touched the wood. It was warm, soft. Not like flesh, but like something alive that had never been afraid. He drew a spiral, simple, centered, true. The moment the line finished, the door responded. The feather in the bowl lifted. The dust reformed itself into the shape of a camel doing cartwheels. The air thickened, glowing at the edges. Then the door cracked open, and behind it, light, not harsh or blinding, warm. KhAnubis exhaled slowly. "It knows you." Ameen turned, nervous and thrilled. "But I don't know it." "That's the whole point," said KhAnubis. "You walk through, and then the story figures out what to do with you." Toast jumped first. He didn't wait, didn't blink, just launched. KhAnubis saluted him with the mop. "Bravest of us all." Ameen looked down at his chalk, then at the open doorway. "I don't know what I'm doing." KhAnubis rested a hand on his shoulder. "Good," he said gently. "That's how the best stories begin." And together they stepped through, leaving behind the shelves, the bowl, the glowing feather, and the echo of a room that had finally been written into story again. Chapter 8. The light didn't blind, it welcomed, soft, gold-tinted, the kind that spilled across pages in a sunlit attic or filtered through the feathers of a sleeping bird. KhAnubis stepped through first, mop angled like a compass. Ameen followed slower, his chalk still clutched tight in one hand, the other grazing the doorframe as if to anchor this moment in muscle and memory. Toast had tumbled in front of them both, like a triumphant cinnamon roll of destiny. Then the door vanished, gone. No slam, no swirl, just no longer there. The space they'd entered was sealed, not like a trap, but like a room that had finally received the guests it had been waiting for. The floor pulsed once beneath their feet. Ameen looked around. It wasn't what he'd expected. There were no walls, not really, just curves of space that suggested the idea of edges. The ceiling arched into nothing, and above them, stars. Not distant pinpricks, close, huge, moving. Some wheeled slowly, casting shadow patterns across the floor. Others flickered in and out like thoughts trying to decide whether to become dreams. The center of the room held a low stone platform wide as a dinner table, carved with thousands of tiny indentations, spirals, sunbursts, and symbols from at least 14 languages, only half of which Ameen recognized from old documentaries and strange dreams. KhAnubis circled it, eyes narrowed, mop held out like a censer. "This isn't storage," he murmured. "It's an interface." Ameen blinked. "For what?" "Story." He ran his fingers across the spirals. The stone under his touch shimmered, not glowing exactly, but warming, like it remembered being needed. Wedge, silent until now, blinked into view and floated above the platform, a new glyph unfurled midair. Local field unlocked. Initiating thread map compilation. Caution. Narrative interface detected. Ameen leaned in. "What does that mean?" KhAnubis didn't answer right away. Instead, he touched one of the symbols, a jagged line that flickered under his fingertip. The room shifted. Not the floor, not the space, the story. For one breathless second, Ameen saw a version of himself, older maybe, taller, laughing under a canopy of fig trees. Then it vanished. "Did you see that?" Ameen whispered. KhAnubis nodded slowly. "It's bleeding through." "What is?" KhAnubis looked up at the stars now, rearranging themselves in nervous patterns overhead. "The old map. The one Earth buried. It's waking up too fast. Something's tugging it out. He didn't sound scared. He sounded fascinated. Ameen pressed both hands to the platform. Can we talk to it? Sort of, KhAnubis said, crouching beside him. You don't talk to story. You listen. And then you answer. Toast clambered up beside them and planted his plush nose directly on one of the spiral carvings. A soft ding echoed through the chamber. A circular portal of light opened beside the platform, like a lens focusing into a memory. Inside, a scene. Clearer than the ones upstairs, this one was anchored. An old woman in a patterned headscarf laughing while stringing beads beside a river. A child playing nearby, chalk in hand, tracing stars into the mud. No plaque, no label. But Ameen felt it hit him like a heartbeat from inside out. I've been there, he whispered. Or I dreamed I had. Same thing, said KhAnubis. This room pulls from the forgotten real, not the archived, not the documented, the stuff that's lived and lost and still humming. The light pulsed. The portal faded. A second appeared. This one showed a desert at night, a caravan, a fire burning blue, a circle of people telling stories with their hands. KhAnubis leaned in. Okay, he whispered. Now we know what this room is. What? It's the pulse chamber, a bridge for the truths that survived without being saved. Wedge blinked twice and projected a new glyph. Thread anomaly detected. Outside agent observing. KhAnubis froze. The room dimmed. A hum started. Not low, not loud, but steady. Ameen gripped the chalk tighter. What does that mean? KhAnubis stood slowly, his eyes scanning the room, the stars, the cracks between symbols. It means we're not alone in here anymore. One of the stars above them flickered red. Toast squeaked. From the far edge of the platform, the light peeled back, revealing a new doorway. Not a clean one. This door looked ragged, frayed around the edges, leaking a violet glow that pulsed wrong. Wedge beeped sharply. KhAnubis looked at Ameen. This wasn't part of the map. Do we run? We choose. The chalk in Ameen's hands sparked. Toast jumped off the platform and started waddling towards the ragged door like a beanbag-shaped warhorse. Ameen exhaled. We're choosing, aren't we? KhAnubis smiled. Mop slung across his back. We're always choosing. It's just that now the story's watching. He extended his hand. You ready? Ameen didn't hesitate. He placed the chalk in his pocket and took it. Together, they followed Toast towards the doorway the map hadn't planned for, into whatever lay beyond the thread that didn't wait for permission. Chapter 9. The violet glow bled across the threshold like ink from a dream, too bright, too dark, too curious. KhAnubis stopped just short of it, one foot still planted in the soft gold light of the pulse chamber. Ameen hovered beside him, chalk in hand, eyes locked on the rippling doorway like it might suddenly lunge. Toast waddled directly through. No fear, Ameen muttered. No brakes either, KhAnubis added. The doorway pulsed, once, twice, and let them pass. The room on the other side wasn't finished. Literally. It looked like a museum that had been halfway through deciding what it was going to be, and then forgot. The walls were rough and flickering, like static trying to become stone. Shelves hung in midair, holding objects that hadn't decided if they were relics, weapons, or sandwiches. One jar blinked at Ameen and burped softly before fading from view. At the center of the room, a floor pattern was slowly drawing itself. Lines etched across the tile like self-aware chalk, circles within circles, a spiral at the core, shapes that looked suspiciously like an eye, a claw, and something that might have been toast if you squinted and tilted your head. KhAnubis crouched beside the markings. "These are story locks," he murmured. "But they're in progress. Someone's trying to write their own access." Ameen stepped closer, heartbeat thudding. "That's bad, right?" "That's complicated," KhAnubis said. "It means we're not the only ones who found the edge of the map." Wedge flickered into view and immediately started blinking like a panicked toaster. A new glyph appeared. "Intrusion thread confirmed. Agent ID unknown. Intent unsorted. Caution. This door does not belong to us." Ameen backed up. "Wait. If it's not ours, whose is it?" Before KhAnubis could answer, the pattern on the floor locked in. The room shifted, and then it spoke. Not with words, with pull. Like gravity suddenly got very interested in the two of them and decided, yes, these, right now. The spiral at the center flared. Toast squeaked. Ameen grabbed KhAnubis' arm. Shouldn't we be running?" KhAnubis shook his head. "Too late. It's already reading us." "Reading us?" "Don't worry. I've been read before. It's never dignified, but we survive." The spiral flared brighter. The lights in the room blinked. The shelves spun. The air rippled. Then, pop! The pull stopped. Everything held still. Then Toast sneezed. "Did we win?" Ameen asked. KhAnubis stood slowly. "No idea, but something blinked. Us? Maybe the room." A new structure now stood at the far side of the space. Not a door this time, a staircase. It led up into what looked like the sky. Ameen frowned. "Wasn't this under the museum?" "Yes," KhAnubis said, adjusting his hoodie. "Still is, mostly." He peered up the staircase. "But some spaces don't care about where they're supposed to be." Toast was already halfway up. Wedge blinked green for proceed with reckless curiosity. Ameen sighed. "Fine. Let's go chase the plush camel into the dimensional stairs. Totally normal." KhAnubis grinned. "You're catching on." They climbed. At the top, they emerged into nothing. But not empty nothing. This was between. No ground, no sky, just soft violet air stretching in every direction, littered with floating islands of thought, fragmented images, broken glyphs, half-formed myths spinning slowly like puzzle pieces no one had ever solved. On one island, a campfire flickered without a source. On another, a typewriter typed by itself, writing names they didn't recognize. Toast floated between them, tail twitching like a compass needle. "This is story static," KhAnubis whispered. "The place where half-told truths go to wait." Ameen's mouth fell open. "I think I dreamed of this once." "You and half the poets Earth never understood," KhAnubis said, scanning the islands. "But no one walks here unless they're invited. So why us?" As if in answer, one of the floating glyphs spun towards them and burst into soft flame. At its center, a symbol they'd seen before, the scarab, the same one that marked KhAnubis' collarbone. Wedge blinked twice, then projected a new message. "Recognition key confirmed. Anchor point unlocked. New thread access granted." A path formed under their feet, light threaded tiles blooming in midair like a bridge made of remembered names. KhAnubis grinned. "Looks like we just got promoted." Ameen took his hand, eyes wide. "To what?" KhAnubis' smile deepened. "To narrative repair, story restoration, official weirdos with keys to the basement of reality." Toast twirled in midair. and the light path unfurled ahead of them, straight into the part of the tale that had never been written down, but had always been waiting to be lived. Chapter 10. The bridge unfolded beneath their feet like it had been stitched together from old promises. Each tile that appeared ahead of them shivered for a heartbeat, glowing with a soft pulse, before settling into shape. Some carried glyphs, others showed symbols Ameen didn't recognize, but somehow felt true. A spiral here, a lightning bolt heart there. One tile flickered with an image of Toast mid-sneeze, and then turned blank as if embarrassed. "Where are we going?" Ameen whispered. "Forward," KhAnubis said. "Sideways, probably both." The bridge didn't lead to a door, or a gate, or anything stable. It led to a ripple. A shimmer in the air that buzzed at the edges, like a boundary that wasn't convinced it wanted to hold. It looked like the surface of water trying to become glass. Toast didn't hesitate. He hurled himself into it with a war cry that sounded like "Yip!" and disappeared. Ameen blinked. "He really doesn't do caution, does he?" "He's plush," KhAnubis replied. "He bounces." Ameen took a breath. "Okay, on 3? KhAnubis grinned. "You count. I'll commit early and ignore the rules." And with that, he stepped through. The ripple didn't open. It glowed. Suddenly they were in. The space was enormous. An impossible library. It stretched in all directions at once, floor to ceiling to everywhere in between. Floating walkways curved between towering shelves. Lanterns hung in midair, casting soft amber light. Books flapped past like slow-moving birds. Scrolls rearranged themselves in glowing clusters. Some shelves were built into waterfalls. Others appeared to be growing from trees that whispered in a language made entirely of sighs. The air smelled like ink, salt, and the exact feeling you get when someone reads your favorite sentence out loud for the first time. Ameen stood frozen, staring. "It's like every story no one ever finished is alive in here." KhAnubis nodded slowly. "Welcome to the Forgotten Archive." "Why does it feel like it knows me?" "Because it does. It's not just a place, it's what happens when enough stories echo together without being claimed. This place gathers. Gathers what? Almost. KhAnubis took a breath. You know, maybes, could have beens, almosts. Toast was chasing a scroll shaped like a fish. Ameen stepped forward and a small pedestal rose from the floor, offering him a glowing feather pen with a ribbon tied to it. He took it. KhAnubis raised a brow. "That's not standard." Ameen shrugged. "Guess I'm not either." They walked. Every few steps the library shifted, not dramatically, just a slight curve, a new ripple in the layout, like the space was adjusting to make room for them. Wedge floated silently, pulsing green, no warnings, no interference. And for once, everything felt calm. KhAnubis touched a shelf at random. A book slid out and opened midair, showing a half-drawn diagram of a city made of moonlight. "Someone dreamed this once," he murmured. "Didn't write it down, but it stayed." Ameen reached toward a scroll that glowed in pulses. It unrolled itself, revealing a scene. A boy holding a beetle, crying in the rain, whispering to it like a friend. He looked at KhAnubis. "This isn't just memory. This is emotion." "It's soul print," KhAnubis said softly. "Imprints left when someone feels something deep enough to echo. The archive holds the echoes that were too full to vanish." A new glyph formed in the air between them. "Story restoration path verified. Retrieval key present. Initiate deep listening. Toast flopped onto a flotation ring, blinked twice, and muttered something that sounded suspiciously like, "Here we go again." The lights dimmed slightly. A staircase formed ahead of them, carved into the side of a shelf, almost unnoticed. Ameen looked up. At the top of the stairs, a glowing alcove with a low stone seat and a wall of light. In the center of the wall, a glowing spiral. Not spinning, waiting. KhAnubis stepped aside. "This one's for you." "Why me?" "You're the node. You're the piece that doesn't belong, which makes you the one that fits." Ameen climbed the stairs slowly. He sat on the stone seat. The wall of light leaned in. Words started forming, one line, then another, not written, not typed, glowing, floating mid-air. Each line of light became a sentence Ameen didn't know he knew. About chalk, about looking sideways, about whispers that lived in brick walls and the way the wind carried truths when no one else was listening. Tears slid down his cheeks before he realized he was crying. The archive wasn't showing him something new. It was showing him that his story had always mattered. KhAnubis stepped beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is why we came." "To save the archive?" Ameen whispered. KhAnubis shook his head. "To wake the part of the world that still feels, and remind it that stories with heart don't just survive, they reroute everything." A final glyph bloomed. Thread secured. Next door writing itself. "Please, stay weird." Toast sneezed, rolled off the rug, and landed dramatically in a pile of glowing beetle-shaped bookmarks. KhAnubis smiled. "We'll take that as a yes." And far above them, so high it might have been the edge of dreaming, a door opened in the sky. Chapter 12. The door in the sky didn't open like a door. It peeled. First light, then ink, then a sound like ancient paper being uncrumpled underwater. The sky didn't change color. It changed in tension. It was still above them, but now it was looking back. KhAnubis tilted his head. Ameen froze mid-step, chalk hovering near his pocket. Toast hovered upside down in an invisible breeze like he knew better than to land yet. The glowing bridge beneath them pulsed twice, once with welcome, once with warning. "Okay," KhAnubis murmured. "Not ominous at all." Ameen pointed. "That wasn't there before, right?" "Definitely not." They stepped toward the opening sky. The passage wasn't a tunnel. It was a thread. A long, silken corridor suspended in twilight. On either side, impossible vistas rippled, forests where the trees grew backwards into stars, oceans that whispered people's names as they exhaled. A city built entirely from questions no one ever dared to ask out loud. And at the end of the corridor, a single table, wooden, scarred, ink-stained, with a map spread across it that moved even when no one touched it. The map was alive. Ameen approached first. The parchment shimmered beneath his fingers, roads bent, mountains adjusted. Whole symbols erased themselves, then returned, slightly different, as if rethinking their own history. KhAnubis crouched beside him. "It's not showing where we are." "It's showing where we're needed," Ameen said quietly. He didn't know how he knew that, but he did. The map pulsed. A new path inked itself across the parchment, starting at a beetle-shaped icon that glittered when touched. It twisted through strange curves, past glowing question marks and empty circles, and ended in a place marked with a single word: when. KhAnubis traced the path with one clawed finger. It's just not location-based. It's narrative-based. Like story geometry? Exactly. We're not following lines. We're following meaning. Thoth tapped the map with his nose and immediately triggered a holographic bloom. A vision of the museum, but older. Before cameras. Before tour groups. Just a dusty sunbeam catching something ancient in motion. Then it vanished. Ameen frowned. It's showing us what's hidden. KhAnubis stood. And what's next? From the far side of the map room, a shadow stirred. Not dark or hostile, just expectant. A figure stepped forward. She was tall, wrapped in robes that shimmered like layered dusk. Her face wasn't fully visible, covered in painted lines and a faint blue glow, but her eyes sparkled like polished onyx. She looked at KhAnubis, then Ameen, then Thoth, and nodded once. "You opened the thread," she said. KhAnubis bowed, instinctively respectful. "We were called." "No," she said. "You called. The archive doesn't reach for the loud. It opens for the ones who are listening." Ameen stepped forward. "Are you the librarian?" Her smile was like stone warmed by sun. "One of them. This archive has many guardians. Some are books, some are beasts. I'm just the current spine." She turned to the map. "This is no ordinary mission. It won't end in treasure. It will end in a question." KhAnubis crossed his arms. "We're good with questions." "No," she said, and now her voice dropped into something older. "This one will be about who gets to write the ending." The light around the map dimmed. One word pulsed across its center. Redrafting. "Someone," she said, "is trying to rewrite your story, all of it, backward, before it ever had a chance to breathe." Ameen's stomach twisted. "Why?" "Because rewritten stories become forgotten ones, and forgotten stories don't fight back." KhAnubis stepped up beside him. "Then they messed with the wrong archive." The map flared, the table lifted, and a new door formed in the floor. This one etched in lines of chalk, gold, and soft pulse. The librarian looked at them both. "Once you step through, the story won't slow down. Are you ready?" Ameen looked at Thoth, who was already adjusting his ear like a battle helmet. Then he smiled. "We were born ready." KhAnubis laughed, heart full. "Let's rewrite everything." And together they stepped into the chalk-lined door, unaware that the one doing the redrafting had just noticed them back. Chapter 13. The chalk doorway didn't open so much as reconsider itself. It blinked once, then widened, like a book spine stretching after a long nap. KhAnubis stepped through first, still holding the map's afterglow in his chest. Ameen followed, chalk in one hand, the other still clutching Thoth, who was vibrating slightly, with enthusiasm or indigestion, possibly both. They emerged not in another room, but a rift. The ground beneath them was stone, but it floated. Islands of carved sandstone hovered over a vast sea of script. Inked paragraphs tumbled beneath them like storm clouds made of half-told stories. Below, the words bled into each other, forming loops and curls and punctuation marks that flared like bioluminescent jellyfish. Overhead, no sky, just layers of vellum-thin ceiling, transparent and swirling like someone had tried to wrap the world in manuscript paper. Ameen's mouth dropped open. "We're in the margins?" KhAnubis nodded. somewhere between edits. Wedge pulsed yellow in his hoodie jacket, cautious, alert. The path ahead zigzagged across floating platforms, each marked with a glowing glyph. The one they stood on read, "Plot armor, thin, use discretion." Thoth snorted. A ripple passed beneath the island. Words from below surged, letters rising into the air, rearranging mid-flight. KhAnubis stepped back just in time as a sentence tried to reformat itself around his leg. "Someone's rewriting," he said softly. "Here?" Ameen whispered. "Now?" KhAnubis crouched. "This space isn't stable. If a story's loose enough, it leaks here before it sticks." From the far end of the path, the figure appeared, not fully formed, wrapped in ink, cloaked in torn pages, face obscured by a quill-shaped mask. It held a red pen the size of a staff. Wedge shrieked in glyphs. "Rewriter detected. Source unauthorized. Style hostile." Ameen stepped behind KhAnubis instinctively. The figure raised its pen and slashed the air. Instantly, part of the path vanished. The sentence below flared. "They never made it past this line." KhAnubis's eyes narrowed. "Oh, no, you don't." He stepped forward, raised his mop like a wand, and swirled it through the air. Gold light sparked from the bristles, sketching an emergency bridge between gaps in the story flow. "You don't get to redact us," he growled. Ameen blinked. "You turned the mop into a rewrite deflector?" KhAnubis grinned. "I have a thing for plot holes." He spun, flinging light. The path stitched itself forward. The rewriter flicked its pen again, slashes of scarlet slicing towards them like grammar knives. Thoth leapt. A single plush spin, and he landed midair, catching a falling comma in his teeth like it was a frisbee. "Hero," Ameen whispered. Then the entire sea of script below them surged. KhAnubis turned just as a paragraph the size of a truck exploded upward, trying to overwrite the platform they stood on. He slammed his staff into the stone. "No!" A burst of true voice erupted from his throat, divine, clear, command tier. The paragraph shuddered and dissolved. The rewriter paused. It stepped back, unsure. Ameen stepped forward now, eyes blazing. He didn't shout, he wrote. With chalk in the air, he drew a spiral, a feather, a question mark. And then he scrawled one final line. "This part doesn't belong to you." The glyph ignited. The sea of words below flared white. The rewriters screamed, not a sound, but a scraping, like ink being forced back into a pen. Then it vanished, dissolving into loose letters that scattered like frightened birds. Silence fell. KhAnubis lowered the mop. Ameen stood still, heart thudding in his ears. Wedge pinged softly. Threat dissolved. Threat stabilized. Rewrite blocked. Toast burped up a comma. KhAnubis exhaled slowly. That was too close. Ameen nodded. They're trying to erase us before we're even finished. KhAnubis looked around the margin space. But stories don't die in the margins, he said. They sneak out. They reroute. They get weirder. Toast hiccuped. A new path unfolded ahead of them. It didn't sparkle. It didn't glow. It invited. KhAnubis turned to Ameen. "You still in?" Ameen grinned. "More than ever." They stepped forward toward whatever rewrite was coming next, and far behind them, in the drifting echo of the rewriter's scream, a semicolon trembled. Chapter 14. The new path didn't glow. It grumbled. Each step forward was met with the soft resistance of ancient stone trying to make up its mind. The floor tiles whispered things under their breath, mostly about sandals, poor punctuation, and the general decline of polite adventuring. Ameen stepped carefully. This hallway has feelings. KhAnubis nodded. Yeah, it's judging our vibes. Toast sneezed glitter. The corridor curved inward like it was the inside of a seashell, walls layered in etched spirals, constellations, and faded declarations written in languages that hadn't been invented yet. Glyphs rearranged themselves as they passed, like they were being graded. One tile lit up beneath Ameen's foot, promising. The next one lit up under Toast, fluffy yet suspicious. Under KhAnubis, trying his best. KhAnubis glared at the floor, rude. Wedge beat from the inside of his hoodie pocket, flashing an unhelpful glyph. Factual. The hallway ended in front of a massive circular door. It wasn't just a door, it was a statement. 50 feet tall, rimmed in bronze and obsidian, carved with spirals that moved when you weren't looking. It pulsed with story weight. The kind of energy that gathered when a door had held back something that didn't want to stay put for too long. A single panel on the side flickered to life. Welcome to the Core Archive Vault. Please state your reason for entering. 1. Heroic sacrifice. 2. Unpaid internship. 3. Accidental prophecy. 4. Delivering snacks. Ameen reached for the chalk. KhAnubis stopped him. Wait. He stepped forward and said clearly, "We're here to listen." The door paused. Then, very slowly, a section of it turned translucent, revealing another door behind it. That door was smaller and smugger. It had arms, crossed. "Oh no," KhAnubis whispered. "It's a nested threshold." Toast wheezed. The inner door blinked and spoke in a bored tone that somehow echoed through time. "Password." Ameen glanced at KhAnubis. Do we have one?" KhAnubis turned to the chalkboard wall beside it and scrawled quickly, "Truth plus chaos plus kindness equals access." The door made a dismissive meh noise. "Fine," it sighed, "but no snacks allowed inside unless they can recite poetry." Toast pulled out a granola bar and whispered, "Oh, crunchy cluster, forged in time's cardboard embrace." The door snapped open. Inside the vault, the air changed. It smelled like storm-soaked books, warm quartz, and unfinished ideas. Columns of light stretched up into nowhere, illuminating floating archives, books, stories, sketches, chalk spirals, plush prototypes, even old vending machine offerings that had somehow become sacred relics. A glowing orb hovered in the center. It pulsed like a heartbeat made of punctuation. KhAnubis stepped forward. "This is the core." Ameen blinked. "What does it do?" The orb brightened. "I watch for the ones who notice what's missing," it said. Toast tapped the orb with his nose. It blinked twice, then projected an image. A cavern. A massive library of crystal and smoke. Not here, not Egypt. Somewhere else, far away beneath the waves, or the land, or the idea of either. A title appeared beneath the image. Next. Ameen looked up. "That's not here," KhAnubis grinned. "Nope. That's our next adventure." The orb pulsed again. But first. The room shifted. A ripple passed through the archive shelves as hundreds of sleeping story scraps stirred, stretched, and began glowing faintly. "This story's not done yet." Toast did a victory somersault and accidentally triggered a backup beacon that launched confetti. Ameen grinned. Guess we're staying. KhAnubis raised the mop like a sword. Let's finish this chapter properly. Chapter 15. The archive didn't hum, it throbbed. Not painfully, more like a forgotten instrument warming up. The light was buttery gold with a hint of electric green, and the very walls seemed to pulse in sync with some invisible heartbeat that didn't belong to the room. Or maybe it did, but had been quiet for far too long. KhAnubis moved through the rows like he belonged there, which he did, sort of, technically, just not on paper. Wedge scanned quietly from inside his hoodie, but even he seemed subdued, glyphs blinking in slow curiosity. Ameen kept close behind, one hand dragging along the edge of a floating shelf, stacked with glass jars full of written dreams. Some glowed, some muttered. One had clearly learned sarcasm. Toast rode on Ameen's backpack now, acting like he'd always been head of security. His nose twitched at every flicker of movement, and he was humming what might have been an ancient war ballad or a cereal jingle, hard to tell. They passed displays made of memory, a chalkboard shaped like a spine, a tapestry of infinite, almost could-have-beens, a drawer labeled story scraps that refused to behave. KhAnubis paused. A vending machine stood alone against the far wall, gleaming faintly under a beam of archival light. It didn't match anything else. Stark metal frame, plastic buttons, digital interface with no power source, and the items inside were unusual. Slot A1 held a jar of lightning shaped like a jelly bean. Slot B4 was full of lint with names stitched into it. Slot C7 simply read, "Do not purchase during eclipses." He stepped closer. The machine buzzed once, then spoke. "Did you bring exact change?" KhAnubis blinked. "What?" "For the truth. It's only fair." Ameen's eyes went huge. "Okay, that's creepy, but also awesome." Toast narrowed his plush eyes. "Tell it we brought a coupon." KhAnubis tilted his head. "What kind of truth are we talking about?" The machine whirred. "The kind you almost forgot you needed." Ameen leaned in and whispered, "Do it." KhAnubis reached forward, placed one palm flat against the glass. The machine vibrated once, then twice, and instead of dispensing a snack or a relic, it blinked and opened a compartment. Inside sat a folded piece of paper and a glowing beetle-shaped key. Ameen took the paper. He read it out loud. "Not all forgotten things are lost. Some are just waiting for you to show up." Below the message was a crude drawing of a stairwell beneath a sarcophagus marked with the Eye of Ra. Underneath that, "Bring the beetle." KhAnubis pocketed the key. He turned towards the others. "I think we just got our invitation." Toast struck a pose. "To what?" Ameen grinned. "The next layer." The archive rippled again, like it approved. KhAnubis squared his shoulders, eyes bright. "Let's go make some ancient secrets uncomfortable." And with that, they turned toward the far wall, where a crack had just appeared beneath the mural of the first sunrise. The floor beneath them purred, and the beetle key began to glow. Chapter 16. The crack in the mural shouldn't have been there. Not just because ancient murals didn't crack with that much intentionality, but because this one had just rearranged itself into a doorway the size of a whisper. The mural depicted the first sunrise. Ra's bark slicing through sky waves of light, the stars retreating like polite backup dancers. But now the paint peeled back in elegant curls, exposing a spiraled stairwell that hadn't existed 10 seconds ago. It breathed once, inward, like an invitation. KhAnubis ran his fingers along the edge. That's not paint. That's story matter. Ameen peeked around him. So, do we knock or just dramatically descend? Toast launched himself forward with the confidence of a plush being who had nothing else to lose. Downward! He yelled like a war cry and immediately vanished into the stairwell with a faint boof. KhAnubis sighed. Well, that answers that. They stepped in. The stairwell wasn't made of stone, not exactly. Each step shimmered beneath their feet, iridescent, not quite solid, shaped like compressed dreams. They didn't creak or echo, they responded. Some steps buzzed, others purred. One briefly played a harp chord when Ameen's heel touched it. Is that normal? Ameen asked. For here? KhAnubis said. Honestly, it's better than last time. The stairs used to critique your posture. The walls curved in a slow spiral, textured like pressed silk and ancient sediment, shifting from pale sandstone to shadowed bronze the deeper they went. Glyphs floated free from the walls, flickering softly, trailing behind like sleepy fireflies trying to finish a bedtime story. It smelled like night air and old libraries and petrichor, the scent of dry land after a first rain. This place was sealed for a reason, KhAnubis whispered, but not because it was dangerous, because it was early. Early? Ameen asked. Yeah. Some stories come into the world before the world's ready to hear them. They descended deeper. With each step, the air thickened, not with weight, but awareness. The temperature didn't change, but something else did. The sound shifted. The space leaned in. Like the walls weren't just walls. They were witnesses. Then they heard it. A hum. Not machinery, not wind. Subtle at first, then steady, like someone tuning a forgotten harp with cosmic fingers. The stairwell was humming in its sleep, a lullaby, slow and resonant, layered with notes that felt half-remembered and strangely kind. It wasn't music you heard, it was music you felt, the kind that settles behind your ribs and reminds your bones they belong to something older. KhAnubis paused mid-step, one ear twitching. It's singing. Ameen leaned into the wall, his hand brushing the smooth surface. It pulsed under his palm like a heartbeat, gentle, curious. I think it likes us, KhAnubis smiled. It doesn't just like us, it knows us. Toast let out a plush bark and sneezed directly into a swirl of hovering glyphs. One exploded in surprise, spinning off like a tipsy firework and bouncing off the stairwell ceiling before fading into laughter. The humming shifted slightly, not louder, deeper, like the stairwell was tuning to them, responding to their energy, to who they were, not just what they were doing. Some structures were never built, KhAnubis murmured, hands still on the wall. They were grown. This stairwell wasn't carved, it was cultivated. That's why it responds. It knows its keepers. They continued downward. The light around them slowly lost its golden hue, fading into a shade so rich and layered it was hard to name. It was blue, but not just blue. It was the blue, the deep ancient kind, the color of sapphire ink on old papyrus, the shadows behind temple doors before the sun reaches them, the blue of oceans that have never been charted, holding stories no one dared dive deep enough to hear. It wasn't just the color, it was intent. At the base of the stairwell, the stone leveled into a small landing, silent, perfectly smooth, waiting. And in the front of them stood a door, no handle, no hinges, no seams, just a single piece of stone-like material, polished until it reflected the light around them in soft ripples. But at its center was a carving, not flat, not etched, but raised, like it had grown outward from the door's own surface. A spiral, wrapped in a feather, pierced by a mop. Ameen blinked. "Is that us?" KhAnubis didn't answer immediately. He stepped forward, fingertips grazing the edge of the symbol. "It's a mark," he said, "of intent, of purpose." He pointed to the spiral. "That's the ripple of stories, truths that echo outward." Then the feather. "The truth has to be carried lightly, kindness first, always." And finally, he pointed at the mop. "And this? That's ours. Chaos with care, weird as a method, cleaning up not because it's glamorous, because it matters." Ameen stepped beside him. "This door doesn't just recognize us. It was waiting for us." KhAnubis shrugged. "Or it's the worst hieroglyph for don't knock. Either way." As he reached toward the symbol, the door shimmered once, like it had just exhaled for the first time in centuries. He pressed his hand to the center. The door rippled like water and opened. Inside was a room made of sky, not the sky above, the sky beneath. Mirrored ceilings, floor, and walls, all made of something between crystal and atmosphere. The stars moved through the walls like fish in a glass ocean, lightning flickering inside the stone like nerves trying to remember how to feel. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on the pedestal, a book, closed, glowing faintly. It had no title, no lock, just a cover stitched in what looked like a beetle wing filament, and the tiniest feather you'd ever see. Wedge beeped. Toast licked the floor. Ameen stepped forward, eyes wide. I feel like this book is watching me." KhAnubis didn't move. "Because it is." The air shimmered, and then the book breathed. The cover rose and fell like lungs. And in that moment, every light in the room shifted inward, drawn toward the thing that pulsed not just with ink, but with waiting. The kind of waiting that only shows up when a story knows exactly who it's been waiting for. Chapter 17. The book didn't just rest on the pedestal. It hovered slightly, as if even gravity respected its boundaries. The chamber around it was shaped like a circle someone had whispered a secret into. The walls, smooth as desert glass, glowed faintly with the kind of blue you only see between waves just before a storm. Light flickered from no visible source, liquid, luminous, and alive. Everything felt both still and expectant. Ameen stepped forward first, shoes crunching softly on crushed crystal tile. His curls had gone completely wild again, pushed upright by the static in the air. His hoodie, already scribbled with chalk, lint, and Toast's plush fur, clung to him like he was walking through atmosphere that hadn't been disturbed in centuries. KhAnubis followed, slower. His eyes tracked every ripple in the light, every flicker in the corners of the mirrors that lined the floor. He adjusted his hoodie, the Cairo Museum badge still slightly crooked, his body still technically Alexander, but his eyes, they were his. Eyes that had watched stars be born and jokes go over gods' heads. Eyes that had flickered with gold whenever the truth showed up uninvited. At the center of the chamber, the book pulsed. It looked like it was breathing. The cover shimmered like beetle wings caught in moonlight, not leather, not cloth, woven meaning. Stitched into its surface was a spiral coiled around a single star. Ameen tilted his head. It's watching us." "No," KhAnubis said softly. "It's remembering us." Toast waddled to the base of the pedestal, squinted up at the book, and gently licked one corner. The book made a faint noise like a very polite xylophone having an opinion. KhAnubis stepped forward, placed his hand flat against the cover, and the chamber reacted. The light deepened. The floor beneath them hummed. The book itself opened, not flipped, unfurled. Pages unfolded into the air like wings relearning how to fly, and from its center a map bloomed into the space above the pedestal, a floating earth, but not the one Ameen had seen in school. This version sparkled with connection. Lines of golden thread crisscrossed oceans, stitched through cities, and pulsed across mountain ranges. Glyphs blinked like heartbeat monitors. Dozens of small glowing beacons, spirals, flames, hands hovered over locations all over the globe. A scarab-shaped light sat at the heart of it all. "This one's us," KhAnubis murmured, pointing to the blinking symbol over Egypt. "Look," Ameen said. "That one just lit up." He pointed toward a pulsing spot deep in the Andes. Another flickered near the floor of the Pacific, beneath curling currents. Wedge poked his head from the hoodie pocket and projected a series of glyphs. "Lost nodes located. Story threads detected. Network reboot in progress. Please refrain from screaming." KhAnubis grinned. "It's a map of story vaults, memory locks, places the truth tucked itself away, waiting for someone to light the spark." Toast sneezed into the map. It zoomed abruptly. Ameen laughed. "You broke it." "Or he translated it," KhAnubis said, watching as the map reformed into a new shape. Atlantis. Not a guess, not a myth. A design. Layered, circular, and very much alive. There was no label, no plaque, but every line of it resonated. Ameen whispered the word before he could stop himself. "Atlantis." The mirrors on the floor responded immediately, flashing with coral pinks, glowing greens, and the unmistakable golden hue of sunrise over salt water. The book vibrated. Not panic, joy. "Atlantis is calling," KhAnubis said, "and it's not the only one." Another panel slid out of the pedestal, revealing symbols no one had seen in thousands of years. A feather drifting toward water, a spiral made of glass, and a tiny beetle riding a curl of laughter. Beneath it, 2 slots, glowing softly. The book was giving them keys, and something else, a choice. A doorway bloomed behind them, not stone, not tech, a shimmer of light that smelled like seafoam, warm citrus, and thunder waiting for a drum. Toast threw himself in first, naturally. Ameen glanced back. "We're just going? What if we get caught?" KhAnubis didn't hesitate. "Then we only get caught doing something worth remembering." He turned to Ameen fully, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We don't follow rules, Ameen. We follow the ripples." Ameen stood a little bit taller. "What if I mess it up?" KhAnubis laughed, genuine. "Then you'll be the first one in history to mess up a prophecy with style. Come on. The mop wants an ocean." The book snapped shut behind them, not from finality, but from completion. And as the trio stepped through the glowing arch into the chapter the world forgot, the pedestal whispered one last line. "The weird ones always rewrite the endings." Chapter 18. It began with a key that wasn't a key, just a shimmer, really. A flick of gold caught in Ameen's chalk lines, a subtle shift in the floor beneath Toast's plush belly, but KhAnubis felt it like a low chord humming through his bones. The kind of tone only certain beings were tuned to hear. "Something just voted yes," he whispered. Wedge beat from inside his hoodie, quietly projecting a glyph that looked suspiciously like a sarcastic shrug. The spiral stairwell behind them sealed with a soft thump. The walls sighed like an ancient book closing. They were alone now. KhAnubis, Ameen, Thoth, and whatever waited in this room-shaped riddle chamber. And the room? It was confused. At first, it looked like a vault. Curved walls, low golden lighting, inlaid geometric patterns that flickered as they walked. But the deeper they moved inside, the more it felt like they were standing inside a memory that hadn't decided how to feel them yet. Every wall had a lock. Some were glowing, some were blinking. One had a crank. One was shaped like an open palm, and one was just a banana with a sticker that read, "Do not eat again." KhAnubis approached the nearest glyph-etched door. It shimmered, hissed at him in what might have been ancient Atlantean, and then powered down like it had gotten embarrassed. "Friendly," he muttered. Ameen traced a finger along a nearby panel. "These aren't museum locks." "Nope," KhAnubis said, studying the walls. "These are narrative seals." "Story locks?" "Exactly." He turned slowly, eyeing the room's strange geometry. "This place isn't guarding an object. It's guarding a turning point." He could feel it, bubbling beneath the surface like soda fizz beneath marble. The locks weren't random. Each one pulsed with a specific kind of intent: emotion, memory, decision. They weren't keeping people out. They were waiting for the right kind of key to show up, which meant... Thoth sneezed into the light and did a slow somersault. Ameen, still kneeling beside him, gave a little nod. "Okay, but hear me out. What if we're the keys?" KhAnubis blinked. He looked again, really looked, and it was all there. One lock lit up when Ameen laughed. One buzzed when Toast rolled near it. And one lock shimmered each time KhAnubis whispered anything truthful. He stepped closer to the third lock and said softly, "The world doesn't need perfect gods. It needs weird ones who care." The lock clicked, not open, just interested. Ameen watched with wide eyes. "So we just tell the truth?" "Only if it scares us a little," KhAnubis whispered. They spent the next hour unlocking the room, not with tools, but with presence. Each lock required something different. A laugh shared with no reason, a fear spoken out loud, a question asked with no need for an answer, a story drawn in chalk on Toast's side. Some locks didn't open, some opened and shut again. But with each shift, the room breathed, the air changed, the lights warmed. It was remembering itself and them. And finally, in the far back wall, a final door appeared. No locks, no glyphs, just a slow heartbeat of blue light and a single phrase carved into the stone. "The next one is waiting." Ameen tilted his head. "The next what?" KhAnubis didn't answer right away. Because the air was different on this side of the vault, thinner, older, not in years, but in layers. It was like standing near the edge of a dream that someone else had left unfinished. He pressed his palm to the door. The blue light spread beneath his hand, spiraling out, like a bracelet made of sea foam and sky maps. For a moment, the room around them flickered, and they saw it, not clearly, just a glimpse. A vast crystal chamber, floating staircases, a laughing figure with a cloak that glitched between feathers and fins. Another presence, smaller, rounder, spinning in circles and yelling something about spark fruit and anti-gravity muffins. The vision snapped shut. KhAnubis staggered back. Ameen gasped. Thoth burped ancient static. Wedge, silent until now, projected a single new glyph. Destination confirmed. Atlantean sequence unlocked. KhAnubis didn't smile. He grinned, because someone else had just blinked into the story, and the story was far from over. To be continued in Book 2, The Adventures of KhAnubis with a K, Atlantis. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining me for KhAnubis with a K on Echoes of My Imagination. My name is Tracy Lee. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and follow, and I'll catch you next time.